What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Counting Wisdom podcast. I wanted to talk about how we have to have the awareness that we are sinners and we're in sin when dealing and living in this world, as far as interacting with people that we perceive as ungodly, whether we get it through the way that they talk or their demeanor, or maybe they smoke cigarettes or something along those lines. Maybe they have tattoos, or maybe they just have a mean face in some way. And so, I think one of the things that can help us as Christians, even though we are set apart as far as living a holy life to God and, going to heaven, but I think we also have to have that awareness that, God is still leaving us here in this earth, and we're mixed with good people and bad people. One of the things that I wanted to make note of, in this podcast is that not every unbeliever is the worst person in the whole entire world. There are moral people who reject Jesus Christ that are, sort of still on their way to hell, but they may not necessarily be the worst person that you come across, even though they may, of course, express some sort of disdain as far as following Jesus Christ, as far as, being someone that, wants to put their faith in Jesus Christ. And then, of course, you can come across people who are, not interested in righteousness, or they may not be a moral person at all. And so one of the things that I just wanted to make note of is that I think something that can help us, I think it's really tied into humility, is, sort of having the humility to say, God is still leaving me here in this earth, and so I have to sort of coexist, not in the whole movement of coexist. That's not what I mean. I don't believe in coexist as far as eternity is concerned, but as far as getting along with people, Paul said it himself that we would have to go out of this world in order to not, come across someone who is sexually immoral, or who steals, or something, who lies. And so now we shouldn't, I don't think, keep company with people who are on those different pathways. I think there's definitely a separation between, going to the bar versus going to church on Sunday morning, or Sunday evening, or Saturday morning. And so at the same time, I think something that can help us is realizing and reflecting on how we were sinners, and apart from Jesus Christ, we cannot save ourselves. And I think that's one of the great parts of, the whole preaching of once saved, always saved, even though I don't believe in once saved, always saved in the traditional sense that some people can preach it. One of the things that comes from that type of teaching is realizing that, we didn't save ourselves. No matter the amount of opening the door for someone, saying, hi, how are you? Smiling and waving your hand at someone, no matter amount of, giving money to the poor, or, different things that we count as sort of good works here. The Bible tells us that God is the only good one. And I think this is a learned thing. I'm not saying that I've got this down, as far as interacting with those who are not Christians, or those who may be Christians but may be, I don't know, maybe sort of not really walking that closely with Jesus Christ. I heard a teaching that I thought was pretty good, of how there's going to be good people and bad people in heaven, and that people come to faith in Jesus Christ, but they may have different sins, that if we knew about some sins, we would be like, wow, I don't think this person is going to go to heaven. I mean, think about Moses. Even though it was still, for not a traditional sense of murder, he still did murder someone, even though technically he worked for the government in some form or fashion. David's sin, I think, is one of the pretty big sins in the Bible as far as a righteous person who we know is in heaven, who, murdered a man, even though it wasn't in the traditional sense of murder, but he did things in order to steal someone's wife. Pretty messed up. When you think about Solomon, talk about, promiscuous, he had many, many different women. And I'm sure if we knew a person like that today, we would definitely write them off as, wow, this person is, he needs some work done as far as living for Jesus. And so one of the other things that I think comes along with this type of teaching is that realizing that, many people come to faith in Christ at different periods in their life where, they may have committed a bunch of sins, or maybe they haven't committed many sins, but yet they come to faith in Jesus Christ, And so depending on when that person comes to faith, they could have already, made many mistakes, and yet, they come to Jesus Christ later on. And so people that we may write off, especially, someone that comes across the news, someone who we hear about in the news, we may write them off like, wow, this person is definitely, not saved. But yet, I know that sometimes people can come to Christ at different times, even though we, in our natural eyes, want to sort of write them off as, hey, this person isn't really a Christian, and this person really isn't saved. And so that's what I would say is important. And living in the last days is that, having that understanding of how God is leaving us here for a reason, to be salt and light in the world. I think, for one, to not have the whole world, turn corrupt and, in its own time. I think once the rapture happens, we can sort of write off this world as, wow, people are going to go crazy. But, in the here and now, I think that, we don't have to, have that fear of people who are unbelievers, just because we can have an understanding of how, apart from Jesus Christ, we wouldn't have measured up to, the standard of God. Yeah, one could say that maybe if Adam and Eve didn't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, we somehow may have gotten close to that measuring standard, but that's not how the cookie crumbled. And we all know, if we look and reflect at our own life, many mistakes that we have made that were messed up. I know in the Christian body, many of us can make light of the condition of, that we were in before we found Christ. And I think, yes, there are sort of different levels of sin that people were involved in, but still, sin is sin. And I think sometimes sin, sort of can lie to us and say, oh, this particular sin really isn't that bad, but these other sins are, worse. And I think that is true. But as far as everyone being in a fallen condition, this can be helpful in regards to, getting along in this world until the rapture happens. and I sort of made a podcast on this specifically for Christians who, we may be thinking to ourselves, oh, I'm the only one walking right with God. Well, that's not true, in that, I don't think the Bible records of just only one person walking with God, except maybe Jesus Christ himself, who was technically the only person on earth who was really right with God. But still, even when Jesus was walking on the earth, there were still some accounts of people who weren't necessarily in the worst type of condition before Jesus. I know there's John the Baptist. There was John the Baptist's parents, who the Bible records as, sort of being right with God. There was the widow that saw Jesus as a baby. There was Simeon, who saw Jesus as a baby, who, they were sort of right with God, even though they, came to faith in Jesus Christ too. But think about, they came to faith in Jesus Christ before he even did a miracle. Imagine how spiritually, inclined they were to really come to faith in Jesus Christ before he even does any miracles. And so, for us, I think that, we can't be so high-minded. And I think, even I'm working on this whenever I may do something that I sort of view as, a good work or something, or maybe I'm reading my Bible, or I'm praying, or maybe I haven't sinned in the same way that I used to. And sort of we can get this sort of chip on our shoulder, like, I'm better than all these other people. Well, I think, again, reflecting on how we would not have made it without Jesus Christ, without Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. No matter of good that we have done can make up for the wrong that we have done. Whether you have only stolen a candy bar, who knows, that candy bar could have been pivotal for that business or something, and eventually they went out of business because of all the people who collectively stole from their business. I don't know, something that you can deem as sort of harmless may not be all that harmless when you really get God's perspective on it. And so, hopefully this is helpful to someone. I think that, we're all on that journey to sort of, be better and, get right with our Creator, Jesus Christ. But, this is something that I think can be helpful in regards to living here on this earth before the rapture. So thanks so much for checking this out. Hopefully this was helpful to someone, and I will talk to you on the next one. See ya.